So Amsterdam has a reputation for having innovation embedded in its DNA, as Charles Landry argues. He was part of the iCapital Award-winning jury, and he says it's amazing that this city has this head for such a long time. How come? We have to say that Amsterdam has been a dam between the polders. It's a hub in the network from the beginning. So you see this city, when there was a big storm in 1172, suddenly this dam emerged, and the city and the people were living between the rivers, being able to trade, to get lots of information, and to act upon this information. So Amsterdam has been a maritime city from day one, and ships are cradle to a variety of technologies, like navigation, like information, like new ways to build things and construct. Being such a city, we have been part of all the different technological revolutions. So in the 17th century, Amsterdam was known because of its world power as a VOC, trading company, which would go over many seas. Also part of that, like in every era, there are very painful things. So Amsterdam was also part of slave trade. And that's a pain that today you can feel in the city. We were part of industrial revolution. We had very big, poor neighborhoods in the 19th century. But we also invented new ways of caritas, and social democracy emerged as a result of that. In the Second World War, it was very painful because we were part of the Nazi regime. Many fellow citizens were killed. The whole Jewish community was really in the Shoah killed. Today, with all those painful and successful stories, we have embarked in the digital revolution. And here, Amsterdam was again the first to have Virgin Internet coming from America, and we played a very important role in developing the net, be having as Amsterdam the first digital city in the world. Today, we have many people working in this industry. So here we can see Amsterdam being a tradesman and a vicar, always looking for business opportunities, but also always looking at morality, what you can and cannot do. We were a dam in the river with water polders and exchange. We became a maritime town in the 17th century with transport technology and trade. And in the 21st century, we are an information capital with networks, information, and makers through the city and its region. So the character of Amsterdam, you could say, is defined by a deep sense of autonomy. You know, we are maritime people, we travel, we know that there's more than one reality. We also have painful histories that have shaped our collective conscience, and we feel with social responsibilities for people who have less, for people who are different, for people who are outsiders. There's a very strong social sense in this city, which also is often referred to with Spinoza and its tolerance. But like every other city, super diversity, which we are now, it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with being different from each other while we are so much the same. Amsterdam is really a very good catalyst for cultural change, at least in the last half century after Second World War. So you can see we are a funny city where many people, more than 58% of people cycle daily. We have 1,200 bridges. We have 165 canals. We have lots of trams, windmills, over 180 nationalities, and nearly 1 million residents in the town itself, and over 2.5 million in Amsterdam and its region. But if you look at us, we are actually quite small. We are, compared to Shanghai, Manila, Delhi, or Tokyo, we are a very small city. But because we are a hub, because we have more flights than Los Angeles Airport, and nearly as much as Charles de Gaulle, you can see that this function of being a hub in the network is still what makes Amsterdam thrive. So how do we do as civil servants between management and innovation? How do we survive the dilemma between control and doubt, between rules and self-organization? And I'm very thrilled that my 4 colleagues are willing to join me in this reflection. It will be Evelyn Jonkhoff who will speak about how do you secure uncertainty. Being the program manager of the circular economy, she develops an understanding of how social, ecological, local, and global developments are related and affect our local Amsterdam economy. And she has started over 200 projects in this field. Second, Sabine Kekic will speak about how do you introduce a new structure in something like a very large bureaucracy like the European Union. She initiated the European Migrant Advisory Board. Then Adi Adisai will speak, who's an area manager in Zuidoost, been for 2 decades already there. How do you act between formal and informal cultures? Mr. Adisai is really a specialist in dealing with inequality, with hard bureaucracy on a daily basis in a super diverse neighborhood. And last but not least, our city clerk, Peter Teesink, will address us and elaborate and reflect on how you can orchestrate trust and reliability in the city, which is in his job as the assisting the mayor and the alderman and is the leader of our organization, quite a challenge. Let's go.
As the story towards a new strategy for Amsterdam Circular starts in December 2018 when I talked to the International Foundation called Circular Economy and said, okay, how do we kickstart this new strategy? What are we going to do? And she said, well, Kate Raworth, a famous British economist, she developed the donut economics, was searching and looking for a way to apply this methodology on the level of the city. And she was very interested to work with Amsterdam. And I felt immediately from, okay, this is a great chance to have this really integrated approach because we're not working on a program. It's a movement towards a whole new economic system in which we can thrive. So this was really a unique opportunity to work together. And for me, from the start, a few elements are very important. And working with Kate also helped to use those elements and embrace them in a new strategy. And one of them that we have to avoid trade-offs between all the different goals we have in our city. And that instead we have to align it. And for me, the question was, can we use the development of the new strategy towards a circular and climate neutral city to align with all those different goals and to include them? And secondly, when I look at all my colleagues and all the partners in the city, we are so talented. We have so many expertise. Can we include all those different perspectives in order to realize this new strategy that nobody has ever done before, which I like very much because then it's really challenging and it's what Amsterdam is, a creative, innovative capital. So these are very important starting points. And also, I had to bear in mind that we have this political agreement. So it's also very important to align that what we are doing in the city and together with all my colleagues is also aligned with the political priorities. So these are a few starting points to really develop the strategy. And what we've done last year is together with Kate Raworth and Circular Economy, we developed a couple of workshops to learn more about what donut economics is, because in essence it is how to stay within the planetary boundaries and at the same time strengthen social foundation. And we used the outcomes of this workshop as a kind of building blocks towards this new strategy. And in order to make all those different, so to say, make all those different aspects of the strategy, not only a 5-year strategy, but also an innovation and execution program with over 200 projects for the coming 1.5 years. Also developing at the same time the first monitoring framework to measure the transition towards a new economic system. And last but not least, also develop the first city project in which we look both from the global as well from the local level to social impact as well as ecological impact. And all those 4, say, products we make together and we develop together, not only with all those different colleagues, but also with the private sector, the knowledge institutions, and the citizens. And this all came together beginning of this year in a big gathering of around 400 people in finalizing the draft versions of all those policy products, you could say. So together with the city, we finalized the strategy, the over 200 projects, the monitoring framework, and the city portrait. And then the pandemic, it's overcoming us, and it's very overwhelming, this enormous crisis. And in the midst of that pandemic, we launched our new 5-year strategy, the Innovation Execution Program, with over 200 projects, the first monitoring framework, and the first city project about our impacts, realizing that we as a city have a responsibility that doesn't end at the city border. It's a responsibility that takes the world into account. And in the midst of the pandemic, we launched our new approach. And it's overwhelming to see that so many people, cities, organizations, businesses are embracing this way of thinking as a way to overcome this crisis. And it's also helping us here in Amsterdam, because we have one ultimate goal with this strategy, and that is to realize a thriving, regenerative, and inclusive city within the planetary boundaries.
Thank you, Evelyn, very much. Can you just say, how did you secure this uncertainty? Because no one knows how to do it. How do you do it?
Well, learning by doing is key in what we do, because looking at circular economy and at donut economics, we have so many questions and we have so little answers. So the only way to find out is just doing it. And that's also the reason that we have this over 200 very concrete projects to just learn in practice and to embed it in our organization, to embed it in the way we work and in what we are.
Thank you very much. This is a very nice bridge to Sabine Kekic, who is the initiator of the European Migrant Advisory Board to the European Commission. And you have been learning by doing. How did you do it? How do you introduce a new structure in that huge bureaucracy?
Yes, thank you, Caroline. Yes, so I will first say how the Migrant Advisory Board idea was born and then how I implemented it. So in 2016, after a 2-year traineeship at the city, I got this position as a European advisor for the City of Amsterdam. And I was asked to set up like a general cooperation between the city and the European Commission on the better inclusion of migrants and refugees. And because of that assignment, I had to visit all these different conferences at the European level where all the important decisions were being made and discussed about the inclusion of migrants and refugees. And what I noticed very quickly is that there were no migrants and refugees there in the room. And as a former refugee myself, I thought that was quite strange to develop these policies without consulting the great experts we have. So I also thought it was really too bad we didn't use those brains and those knowledge to improve our policies. And then this idea in my head was born, where I thought, why not set up this European Migrant Advisory Board that would consist of a couple of members from different European cities and towns that can consult the European Commission on the inclusion policies. And the first step that I did, I thought, well, this is a great idea. I'm just going to go to the European Commission, to my colleagues there, and say that they should set this up. So I had a meeting with them, I pitched the idea, and they were like, yeah, it's a nice idea, but it's never going to work because we're too big, we're too great of an institution, we cannot just pop up a European advisory board. And but they were enthusiastic about the idea. They just said, we're too bureaucratic, we cannot do it. So then I thought, well, then I'm just going to do it myself, and I'm going to plug the board everywhere where I go. So the first thing that I did is that I started pitching the idea everywhere where I went. So when I went to conferences and even in the hallways, it didn't really matter who I talked to. When they asked what I did not say that I was a European advisor, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I'm working on this idea of setting up this European Migrant Advisory Board. And then there was always someone in the room who was convinced of the idea or wanted to work together. And what I ended up after 2 or 3 months, I ended up with this great group of people from PhDers to, well, Caroline, to some people from the European Commission, some people from cities that said, okay, let's work on this idea. And so we built this kind of a partnership basically outside of the institutions. And that's what I call the Twilight Zone, because this Twilight Zone gave us the freedom to escape some of these bureaucratic procedures that big institutions have that can kill a good idea, let's say. So we worked out this plan, and then we started presenting it at meetings and conferences. At that time, I still had no funding, but I didn't care. I just presented it like it was going to happen, basically. And that's what also my colleagues did from other cities and also from the commission. So we, in the end, presented it somewhere. There was a foundation in the room. They liked the idea and they said, we're going to fund it. So long story short, within a year, we started the European Migrant Advisory Board. And the board lasted 2 years, from 2017 to 2019. And because the commission was always there, they were always also starting to invite the board to every meeting, starting to consult them. Those 2 years gave them the time to organize themselves. And now the commission has adopted the board and will fund it. And the new expert group, what they're going to call it, will start in October and will be consulting the commission with regard to policies around migrants and refugees.
So where did you get the courage from to do this whole seeing is believing? I mean, you made like magic. Where do you get the courage from with all these officials?
Yeah, well, that's also what I liked working for the City of Amsterdam, and that's also what I thought I will not start working for example, the Commission very soon, because I knew I had the freedom to do so within the city. So when I told to the higher level the idea, everyone was like, okay, go for it and see where you'll end. So I really got the freedom to do it.
Yeah. Well, let me use this to introduce Eddie Adusai. Eddie is a highly esteemed area manager of Amsterdam Zuidoost, the most super diverse borough of Amsterdam, 180,000 nationalities only, lots of migrants, lots of seeing is believing. But in these formal and informal cultures, which clash really every day in many places in Zuidoost, there's one guy who sort of keep on standing up, and that's Eddie Adusai. Eddie, how do you do this? How do you navigate between these many informal cultures and the formal structure of the municipality, which in the end has to guarantee a safe and thriving neighborhood for all?
Good. How I work. When I entered into the public service in 1988 in Amsterdam Southeast, I thought to myself, oh God, this is a very diverse society. In Amsterdam, we have a lot of rules and regulations that you must respect. And the population for whom I'm supposed to work with, a lot of them have no idea about these regulations. A lot of them have a lot of social problems, from education to the language to employment to networking. These were the challenges in front of the organization, and for that matter, also for me. What I thought myself is, I'm now going to serve. I'm going to serve the public. And by serving the public, I must have well-defined goals. And most of the time, the goals are not from you. The goals are already established by the politicians. You have to make it concrete. And then to be sure you achieve the goals, you have to check the goals and the resources you have. So I check most of the time, what type of resources do I have to implement the goals that I'm supposed to achieve? The first one is my own team members. How weak or how strong are they? You cannot achieve your goals if you have weak and unmotivated staff members. So the first thing is to make sure that my team members are very motivated. They come to office with pleasure and they see their job as hobby. In that sense, they don't check the time they come and they don't check the time they go. Even weekends they work because they see the job as hobby. And that's happening now. 2, you check your budget. Holland, for that matter, Amsterdam, is very rich. Money is not a problem. It is the ideas, the right projects that you have to invest. That is the issue. If you have good ideas, there's always money. Of course, money is a scarcity when it's come to the problems. But the moment you have the clear-cut projects that you want to do, you can have money if you are more creative. So I really worked hard to make sure we get resources to implement the problems that are available. The next thing I also do is I take risk. And by taking risk, I make sure the risk become calculated because you account for every action you take. And by doing so, I make sure I make use of my 3 crucial advisors: the financial advisor, the judicial advisor, and the advisor of HRM, so that you don't make stupid mistakes. The mistakes you make can always be accounted for if you invest in these advisors. I also check as to whether the implementing bodies are capable of implementing the projects that they are supposed to do. But the crucial stakeholder that I really invest my time in it is a target group. Like I said earlier on, they are very diverse. Their problems are different. Their expectations are different. Approach to solve their problems is different. Even the way to communicate with them is so different. For example, if you want to reach Ghanaian community, which forms 10% of the population in Amsterdam Southeast, if you want to reach them and you go there without a suit, without tie, it's a sign of disrespect. When you put on your nice formal dress, the way they receive you is different from when you go there with your short knickers or t-shirt. So communicating with them, their dressing is also important. If you sit, the way you sit down is important. Putting your one leg on the other and talking to them is a sign of disrespect. If you look at Antilleans, putting on coat and suit is also something that they don't expect you to do that. It's a sign of disrespect. So the cultural diversity must be taken into consideration. That's what I really do to be able to reach the community. The Dutch way of direct communication can be insulting to other communities when you do that. So you should also be indirect. At the same time, you meet the Dutch community, you must be direct to them, and you meet other migrants community, you speak indirectly to them and informal to them. Whilst in groups, you speak formal. So the approach in reaching them and handling your problems depends upon the way you understand them. You cannot use also the approach that yesterday worked and you got success, and the same approach for tomorrow's problem, because the people are changing, their expectations are changing. And finally, also, now the current government in Amsterdam is asking the public to be more assertive, and they are more assertive. And when you compare if the rules and regulations that are more static, you must be creative and innovative to push them to be able to say what you want to say, to use them to also be part of the implementers, and not only always stick to the rules and regulations that are static, else you get confrontation from them. So what I do is, like I said, using the advice I have to balance between the rules and regulations that are static and the innovative way of doing things to get them reached and to get them along and to be able to solve their problems. So basically—
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie. So
Yes.
maybe one last sentence, because we are running out of time. How come you dare to take these risks? Because not many people dare to take such risks. Why can you do that?
The risk that you take, it depends upon some of them. Sometimes it can be financial risk. Let me give a typical example. Last week, the politicians were supposed to decide on proposal that is meant to give money for us to do something for the certain developmental areas. Decision will be taken next Tuesday. But I've told the implementers to go ahead, to start preparation, because the money must be used and finished this year. And we have just 3.5 months. So I take the risk by consulting the stakeholders, the individual politicians informally, and the financial advisor, the judicial advisor, to see the consequences of the risk as to whether it can be managed. And when you are taking risk, and you know when it backfires, everybody will understand you. Then I take that risk. So
Thank you. That's a great answer. You assess the risk and then you go. This is a very good bridge to our city clerk, Peter Teesink. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And your task is to have us all in line, and the politicians and the municipality, and maybe not the whole city really. So how do you do that? How do you orchestrate trust? How do you orchestrate reliability? So all of us can take these risks, can start new projects, and dare to go and innovate for the city as is needed. Peter Teesink.
Well, thank you very much for letting me be here. It's very important for me to talk about the bureaucracy in our city, in our organization. And when I listen to the 3 colleagues of me, I'm very proud of the organization I'm trying to lead. And when you look at those stories they've been told, they fit very well in my philosophy that I use for leading my organization. 3 concepts are very important here: trust, reliability, and inclusion. For me, everything starts with trust. When Eddie says something about risks, is that he's doing that because he's trusting he can do it in an organization which let him do things which are for a good cause. Trust in the will, the knowledge, the creativity, and the commitment of the people in my organization are fundamental. Also, concept of high trust, high penalty is important. But also the confidence in our residents, in our companies, in institutions, that they can and will and want to contribute to the development of our city. I think that Evelyn showed how much we accomplished about that. So we as a government don't have to do everything ourselves. On the contrary, we can rely on our citizens, we can rely on institutions and companies, and I can rely on the people in my organization. Secondly, reliability. Do what you say what you do. Be consistent in your actions, transparent, open. Those are terms that we want to use internally, but also externally. So when it comes to decisions, the use of technology, such as algorithms, we should make sure we are reliable on that. We are a reliable leader, and we can be reliable as a government. That's very important, especially in these days with a lot of insecurity in the city and in the world. It's important that people can rely on the government for being a reliable government. And finally, for me, very important is the concept of inclusion. At the moment, a very difficult topic also in Amsterdam. It's for me very important that everyone participates. Everyone can participate. Everyone feels invited to participate. That we make our circle big enough for everyone to participate, both in our organization, but also in our city. That's not self-evident, and we have to do a lot to ensure that everyone's brain power energy, creativity are fully utilized. And I say day to day, it's a struggle to do that. With the change in demographics and increasing diversity, that's even more important. Because only when we do that, we can be a successful organization. Only when we use every resource there is, we can be successful. And like Eddie said, when he has a team with motivated members, he can reach his goals. And the only way to have everybody motivated is to give people the feeling they count. Their activities, their energy, their brains count as to achieve our goals. And we heard some of the stories before, and I'm making those connections between us, and it's the knowledge and the skills and the trusting of each other, and that we are able to do a lot. And I think when I'm trying to use those even more, that's because we are Amsterdam, and that's the way we want to do things. Finally, I would add one more thing which strikes me in these stories. It's not just talk, it's also doing. It's also doing like Evelyn and Eddie and Sabina told. They're not just talking about it, they're doing it every day. And it's for me also the same. I'm not just talking about it, I'm trying to make a change. I'm talking to a lot of people and make actions, cut some red tape, trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, trust them in the first place, rely on them, and finally include them in the circle we try to bring in our city and bring in my organization. So in that context, I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud to represent our city, and I'm very proud of the people I represent. And I think we can do a lot more if we try to a little bit harder, even more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for a beautiful statement. So this all sounds very nice for all the colleagues of the world that are watching at our debate. But I'm sure they will think, well, that all sounds very ideal. So what do you do when the shit hits the fan? Or when there is a very big disagreement? Or when people feel excluded? Or when your project doesn't go easy? So maybe I can ask maybe from Peter, and then maybe the others can also answer this question. Like, when it doesn't go the way you want it to go, when you see people hurt, what do you do?
When you see people hurt, when they're suffering, first of all, you have to talk to them. You try to understand what's going on. And then you have to make a meaningful difference in the context they're living in, or in the way they are treated, or the way they can act in our organization. And for me, in my organization, I'm trying to give a good example. For example, to talk to people and try to make a difference by, like I said, cutting red tape, giving people chances they didn't have before. So then it's sometimes a little bit small on a personal basis, and sometimes it's large on an organization's basis. But it doesn't make a difference. If you really committed and you show that, then people try to believe you, and then you can make a difference for them as well. So you have to just do it and go to it. Don't look away, head on, and try to solve it.
This is a very Dutch polder mentality. Yeah, we do it together. If the water comes, we have to survive together, and you can't look away when the water is coming. So I appreciate that very thorough Dutch attitude that we all really like, although some people in other countries find it sometimes very bold and too direct. It's one of the ways that we manage to do what we do.
That's why we are Amsterdam and they're not. So.
Sorry, that's why?
That's why we are Amsterdam and they are not. That's the difference.
Okay, so can I ask you, Evelyn? This is quite a hard challenge, to connect the local with the ecological, with the global, and the social with the ecological, and to have so many stakeholders. You must feel disencouraged sometimes. What do you do?
Well, first, I never feel disencouraged because I have this basic interest in what say the driver is for every person in the city, in our city administration, and how I can link those personal drive to our mutual goal. And And yes, of course, sometimes projects doesn't even get started, or there are all those different questions about money and lack of time and all the other barriers we have daily, I can say, is to go back to what are we doing for? What is our mutual goal? What do we want to strive for? And if you go back to that mutual goal, it's easy. And then we're back on track. And the other thing is to be totally transparent about what you're doing, and to try to speak the same language. And I think that's also very important. We in our city, because we have all those different talents and expertise, we sometimes don't speak each other's language, so we don't listen very well. And if we're just starting listening and making time for that, and link that to this mutual goal, I think we can do everything we want. That's basically it.
Can I ask Eddie at this point? Because Eddie, I think you are regularly confronted with people that do not understand each other, not even their own language or their ways of living or their ways of cooking or their ways of learning. And you have to align people with this deep connection. How do you do that?
You have to align with what connection?
Well, how do you deal with difference? I mean, if I ask you, how do you make differences between people? How do you create synergy? How do you make it work? How do you construct a collective feeling about the neighborhood?
In the first place, you can see that the migrants, even though they have different backgrounds, they understand each other. They stand, if you come to one locality we call Han Sinhoef, you will see Antillians and Surinamese standing at one group. You will see Ghanaians another place. You will see Nigerians another place, and Sundays East Europeans also another place. They start in groups, and they understand each other very well. They don't fight with each other, and they are highly organized. So you can just approach them in a different way, different approaches, and then you can, anytime you want to, you cannot get them together in one hall because they speak different languages, they have different expectations. You can't get them together, but you can have means of reaching them and getting them to most of the time what you want.
But I find it so interesting that the children in Amsterdam, who all have more than one cultural background, most of them have that now. For them, it's very different. I see that they play. It's like
they have the same problem. That is unique about. They have the same problem. Whether the person is in a Suriname, of Antillian, or a Ghanaian or Nigerian, they have the same. Most of them have the same language problem. Most of them have a poverty problem. Most of them have an educational problem of their children, work. So that problem is common. But approach in handling the various problems is different because some of them, the causes are different. Some of them don't want to work because they think they cannot get a job. Some of them don't want to work because there's mismatch between the employment of the jobs available and their current qualification. So that has something to do with the cultural background. So one thing is common, like I'm saying, problem is common, approach is different. So you have to use different approaches to reach them and to handle the problems.
Can I ask Sabine? We have seen that to be able to work in a municipality like we do, Peter was speaking also about your personal integrity, yeah? Do what you say what you do. Evelyn talks about go back to your original drive. And he says, take diversity into account, but also align in being diverse and know about it. So I think about all the children who are growing up in a very different world than we used to do.
And maybe you can say yes if I understand it right. So I think the question is how I also use my experience and my background in implementing the board. Is that correct?
That's it.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think that's also why it's important to have diverse organizations and people at different positions with different backgrounds, because I really think that my background, being a refugee myself, having experienced what it means to include or work on integration, I also really saw and acknowledged that there was a knowledge gap, because I saw people talking about better inclusion policies, but some of the solutions they gave I could not recognize coming from my background. And I thought some of the assumptions being made on which policies are based, I don't think are always correct. And I knew it because I had a whole family here in the Netherlands that had to integrate. I had friends who were former refugees, etc. And then there's the other thing which also counts, and that is really having passion about something. So because you do, on your way setting up these kind of ideas, you do get knocked down. You do get people who say this will never work, this will, there are people that will demotivate you. But if you're really passionate about this idea, and I'm quite sure that was because of my background, and I really believed in that this was needed, that also gave me the strength to go forward when I was knocked down or where I made a mistake. So yes, so it definitely counts, I think.
Thank you all, I think. So I understand from my colleagues that part of our success really is that we are all very passionate people about the common city, the common territory, and the common culture, and the air and the green that we share. So passion as a civil servant seems to be a very important quality for being able to navigate the complex landscape between maintenance and control, between rules and self-organization. You know, to have one to say what you do and to do what you say, to align in differences, to take risks, but take good advice when you take risks, and to make people believe what they see. So also sometimes just to take a bit of time to visualize, to make people engage with your story. I think it's quite a nice lesson, because before I worked at the municipality, I never imagined that civil servants would have these passions. Can you maybe, is there anything one of you would like to add to this image of these really passionate civil servants who like to serve the public domain? Why would you choose to do this? Maybe I see Peter move. Peter, why would you choose to be a civil servant and not earn lots of money with your talent?
Civil servant, if you
Well,
want
I think you saw three people, three colleagues, and yourself also included, which are passionate about their trade, about serving the community, and because it's very rewarding, I think, because it's difficult, but when you succeed, it's very rewarding to make a change in people's lives. So for me, it's not about the money, it's about the passion for the people to make a difference. And I think a lot of people, I think even more these days than I think a couple of years ago, and especially in these times from COVID-19, I think you see the people more interested in government because they are depending on it more even than perhaps they thought of before. So I'm hoping that, and it's not only the municipality, but also the healthcare system, the police, everyone who's involved in trying to make the city work. That people are more passionate about to do that because they see they make a difference in people's lives. So I think that's, and we're all people ourselves. We're not robots or something. Huh? So I think it's very, very normal that we have our own passions, and well, like I said, when we in our organization give people room to make to follow those passions, to make use of their own creativity, to be innovative, then we can do a lot for the city. and the city can do a lot for us. So I think it's very, very normal to be this passionate about to be a civil servant.
Thank you, Peter. And Eddie, why did you not just go work for a company in the Southeast? There's so much rich money, so money is flowing over the case there. But you choose to work with the other side of the metro, where the money is not flowing over the case. Why are you doing what you do?
Money has never been my motivating factor to work. I accept any type of life, provided that life can lead to the improvement of others. And I do this job with passion. I become happy, I get my passion for improving people's lives. And through civil service, you can really improve people's lives better and faster than working for the private company.
And how come you have this drive? Eddie?
It is my DNA. It's my DNA. I always fight to improve the system that is not something acceptable. I am always questioning the system. That is more reason why I take risk. I always question the system. I don't make system to be the goal itself. System is means of achieving your goal. System is to avoid chaos. System is to help you do your job. And people who make system as a goal per se are people who have some difficulty with me as a person. And I went there, I applied to be a civil servant once again to fight for people, especially the bigger ones, and to question the system. And it's really working. And I'm glad our overall boss, Peter, is saying he supports people who take a risk, and it's based on trust. And if what you are doing, when you succeed, will improve people's lives, then it's a very good reason to question us whether the current system will really let you achieve the goal. If not, then raise questions about the system and get things done.
Thank you, Eddie. Evelien, can I ask you, I understand you have a deep passion in what you do, but how come you think you can change the system?
I do believe that I and all the other people in the city really can change the system because we are the system. If we can embed it in our daily lives and what we are doing, we really can make a difference because we are the people we are. And being part of Amsterdam, okay, we are the City of Amsterdam. We can make a difference as Amsterdam. We're influential. We can show that you can do it in a different way. We can influence on all different levels. So that is what Amsterdam makes Amsterdam. And that's for me a great opportunity. And that's what I believe, that because we are who we are, we can really make a difference together.
Okay, last maybe, Sabine, you are the youngest, so you will be the last because you will have the most time to live after us. And I want to ask you, when you were young, you have seen terrible things happening in the war in Bosnia. You managed to get here, you do all these positive things. So you are one of the youth that is an example for other people. So what would you say to a young person who didn't have the experience like you have now, and who's maybe 18, 19, and wants to have this impact on the world? What would you advise this young person?
Well, I'm not that young anymore, Caroline. I'm 33 almost. No, I'm joking. So I would advise them to go work for the City of Amsterdam. No, without joking, I think it's very important to follow your passion, and if you're really someone that wants to invest in social affairs, yes, there are companies you can make a lot of money, but in the end of the story, a company's main objective is to make money. And working for a government, especially a local government, I think the will is good, and the will is there to really improve our societies. Yes, we make mistakes. We have a lot of work to do to make these bureaucratic procedures less. But I would really advise young people to look at what is their objective and goal in life, and which goes beyond making money, and what fits best. And I think working for the City of Amsterdam really gives you a lot of freedom. Like I said previously, I'm quite sure I would have never, if I worked for a national government or the European Commission, which is also really great, I'm sure. But I think working for a local government really gives you the freedom to innovate a bit more. So that's the advice I would give.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to thank you all very much, Eddie, Peter, Evelien, Sabine. And I also thank the organizers of the Creative Bureaucracy Festival for organizing this opportunity for civil servants to exchange ideas and to understand how we can do our job better, because we do make a difference in our local communities. I must say that I like to add one thing to my colleagues, because we all have been speaking much about how, and I also asked them, how do you do it yourself? But I think one of the things that's also really important in this kind of context where we work now is to stand up for your colleague. And Peter already made a bit of reference to it, like, I trust my colleagues. I trust they do their work well. So it also starts with giving support and understanding to your colleagues, even if they don't agree with my plan or take another route than I would like them to do. You still have to keep on understanding that we all try to do our best, and even if it clashes, that's okay. And then we find a new way to align ourselves. So I thank you very much. And I'm very happy that we all do our best to survive and make this beautiful world and our people around us a bit better. Thank you. Bye-bye.